Have you ever felt the whisper in your heart that love is closer than you think? That someone right now is preparing to step forward to confess what they've long held in silence? What if I told you? Your imagination has already written the scene. I once found myself walking home in the quiet of the evening, when a thought entered my mind with such certainty it startled me. I heard within, someone is about to confess their love. It was not wishful thinking, it was an inner knowing, a whisper from the depths of consciousness. I did not argue with it. Instead, I embraced it as already true. I assumed the joy of hearing the words spoken, the warmth of love confessed, and I walked as though it had already happened. Days later, the scene unfolded exactly as I had felt it. The confession was not forced, not begged, but drawn by the silent law that imagination creates reality. You see, when you prepare for love, you do not wait in longing. You live in the assumption that love is already yours. The unseen becomes seen, and what was silent becomes spoken. The world cannot resist the seed you plant within. There is a truth so profound that when grasped, it transforms the very foundation of your life. The truth is simple: imagination creates reality. Everything you see around you, the circumstances, the faces, the experiences, once existed only as a thought, an idea, a vision within consciousness. Nothing comes to you from the outside first. It all begins in the unseen workshop of your inner mind. When you long for love, or when you desire a confession of the heart from one who stirs your spirit, it is not the waiting for them that brings it. It is not pleading with chance, fate, or circumstance. It is the act of imagining that person, already speaking the words, already declaring what you long to hear, that sets the wheels of reality into motion. Imagination is not daydreaming, not idle fancy. It is creation itself. You enter into the scene with all the senses awake. You hear their voice, you see their face, you feel the warmth of their words, and in that sacred inner moment, the event is birth. Let us take an example. Imagine you desire someone to confess their love. If you stand in the position of hoping, then you confess only that it has not yet happened. You feed the state of waiting, and the world reflects waiting back to you. But if instead you quietly close your eyes and step into the scene where the words are already spoken, if you can feel the surge of joy, the laughter that follows, the embrace that seals the confession, then you have shifted the seed of reality. That inner assumption will express itself outwardly in due time. Consider the painter before the canvas. The image exists within before it appears in strokes of color. The sculptor sees the statue in the block of marble before the chisel strikes. So too, the confession of love exists in your imagination before it manifests in time and space. You must dare to assume it is real before it is seen, for the unseen is the womb of creation. Some may say, but it feels unreal. I am merely pretending. Yet that very pretense, if persisted in, becomes fact. The outer world does not question whether the act was genuine. It only responds to the impression impressed upon the subconscious. You need not worry about the how nor the when. Your task is to hold the end in vivid imagination, to saturate yourself with the feeling of being loved, and to let that unseen reality take root. Life itself will arrange the steps. The one who is meant to speak will be compelled, by forces unseen, to play the part you have already scripted in the theater of your mind. There was once a time when I tested this law upon something seemingly small, yet it revealed its immense power. I imagined a conversation with a friend that never occurred in the outer world. In imagination, I heard her speak words of affection she had never dared to say aloud. I allowed myself to feel the thrill of it, as though it were happening in that very moment. Within a short span of days, without prompting, she echoed almost the same words in reality. What had been enacted in silence became spoken aloud. The outer event was nothing but the shadow cast by the light of inner vision. So it is with love. If you desire the confession, you must first grant it within yourself. You must hear it in imagination until it feels so natural that you walk the streets with the secret joy of being already chosen, already cherished. When others look at you, they will not understand why your presence radiates differently, why your energy draws forth new responses. But you will know it is because you have rehearsed the scene inwardly and allowed the feeling to become your truth. And this is the great mystery: imagination is not bound by time. The moment you assume a thing to be true, the future bends to accommodate it. Love does not come by accident, it is summoned by the assumption of being loved. The confession of another is not stolen, forced, or demanded. It is drawn as naturally as a flower bends towards sunlight. When you live inwardly in the state of already being the beloved, life has no choice but to mirror it. Think of the countless lives transformed by this principle. The poor man who imagines wealth and later lives in abundance. The lonely soul who imagines companionship and later walks with a partner by their side. The heart that once knew silence but imagines the words of love and soon finds those words spoken by another's lips. All of this reveals the same eternal truth: imagination creates reality. The mistake most make is believing they must wait for outer evidence before believing inwardly. They say, "I will believe I am loved when he tells me so," not realizing that he will only tell them so when they first believe it within. The outer confession is the echo, not the source. The source is the inner act of imagination. You do not wait for proof, you are the proof. You do not beg for love, you assume it, and the assumption shapes the facts of life. So prepare for love not by longing, but by imagining. Prepare not by watching the door, but by feeling that it has already opened. Someone is indeed about to confess, but the confession begins with you, in the sanctuary of your inner vision. When you dare to feel it real, the unseen hand moves, and the world plays its part. What was once only imagined becomes inevitable, for imagination creates reality. To prepare for love is not to wait in longing, nor is it to hold your breath in anxious expectation of what may or may not come. To prepare for love is to embody the state of already being loved, already being chosen, already being desired. The preparation is not outward, it is inward. It is not about arranging appearances, altering circumstances, or convincing another. It is about stepping into the invisible reality that you already dwell in the joy of love fulfilled, and from that inner knowing the outer world must conform. So many, when they speak of love, speak from absence. They say, "I wish someone would love me." They confess, "If only someone would choose me." But in these words lies the secret reason love escapes them. They have affirmed lack, and lack is what is mirrored back. To prepare for love is never to stand in emptiness. It is to claim fullness before it arrives. You must so deeply accept that you are lovable, that you are already in possession of affection, that the world has no choice but to reveal a lover who plays the role you have assumed. Think for a moment about how you dress for an occasion you know is certain. If you were told that tomorrow you will attend a celebration in your honor, you would not doubt whether the event exists. You would not prepare with hesitation. You would put on your finest. You would walk with a sense of anticipation, and you would hold yourself differently because the event was already assured. So it is with love. To prepare is to live as if the confession has already been spoken, as if the embrace has already been received, as if the relationship is already secure. This preparation is invisible to others, but it changes everything about your vibration, your energy, your atmosphere. When you sit quietly and feel the warmth of love surrounding you, when you imagine yourself being looked at with tenderness, when you hear within the echo of words of affection, you shift the ground of your being. The heart no longer cries in emptiness, it sings in fulfillment. And because life is only the reflection of your inner song, someone inevitably appears who responds to that harmony. There was once a time when I longed for affection, and I made the mistake of searching outward. I looked to faces, to actions, to words, seeking signs that love might come. The more I looked, the more it seemed to retreat. But the moment I stopped and turned inward, the moment I began to prepare by assuming the state of being loved already, the whole world changed. I no longer felt the desperation of waiting. I felt the peace of having. And in the quiet certainty of that feeling, confessions began to come uninvited. The very ones I once hoped would notice me suddenly spoke, and their words were the echo of the love I had already granted myself within. Preparation is faith in action. It is faith that what is unseen is already real. It is saying to yourself, "I do not wait for proof is but the shadow. I have already accepted the reality within, and therefore I live as if it is so." To prepare for love is to know that you do not need to beg for it, chase it, or fear its absence. You prepare by dwelling in the state of being already loved, and you carry yourself with a quiet dignity, a serenity that attracts without effort. Ask yourself, how would you speak if you were already adored? How would you walk if you knew someone's heart already belonged to you? How would you smile if you were certain a confession of love was about to reach your ears? This is the preparation. Live in those answers, embody those feelings, and you have prepared yourself better than by any outward means. The universe does not respond to your words, it responds to your state. You cannot fool the inner law by repeating phrases while clinging to doubt. Preparation requires surrender to the assumption. It requires a willingness to believe that what you feel within is more real than what your senses presently report. The senses will tell you you are alone. They will show you empty rooms and silent phones. But if you believe them, you keep yourself in the state of absence. Prepare instead by honoring the unseen over the seen. Prepare by trusting that the confession has already happened, though it has yet to be heard in the outer ear. I recall vividly a moment when I sat alone at night and closed my eyes. Instead of bemoaning solitude, I imagined the soft laughter of a companion nearby, the warmth of a hand holding mine, the tender weight of love present. I did this not as a game, but as preparation. And in that moment, I felt the truth of being loved so deeply that the outer room faded into insignificance. Days later, circumstances unfolded, and the one I desired spoke words that matched what I had heard inwardly. The preparation had drawn the confession from the invisible into the visible. When you prepare in this way, you live no longer in waiting, but in fulfillment. You stop asking, when, and begin living now. You stop searching for signs and become the sign yourself. Love is not summoned by force, it is mirrored by state. The world cannot resist the fragrance of one who already feels adored. It is not arrogance, it is quiet assurance. It is the fragrance of certainty, and that certainty is preparation. So prepare for love not with fear or doubt, not with restless longing, but with inner conviction. Prepare by assuming what is already yours. Prepare by stepping into the state of being the beloved now, and the confession you await will come as naturally as a flower blossoms in spring. The one who is to speak is already moved by your unseen preparation. Love is not far from you. It is as close as the state you dare to occupy. To assume the wish fulfilled is to occupy the state of already being the one you desire to be, already living in the outcome you long to see. It is not hoping, it is not waiting, it is not preparing for some distant day when circumstances may turn in your favor. It is stepping into the end with such conviction that the end becomes present. When you assume the wish fulfilled, you lift yourself above the realm of longing into the realm of having, and in that state, all things must bend to match your inner conviction. When you wait, you confess that you do not yet have. When you plead, you affirm that your desire is still absent. But when you assume, you claim possession, and the invisible law moves to make your assumption visible. To assume is not arrogance, it is the highest act of faith. You take what is unseen and live as if it were already fact, and in time the outer world has no choice but to conform. Think of love as an example. If you wish for someone to confess their heart to you, and you hold yourself in the state of waiting, you will wait endlessly. Every day becomes a rehearsal of lack, a silent prayer that only reinforces the belief that love has not yet come. But if you close your eyes and step boldly into the scene where the words are already spoken, if you hear the confession in your inner ear, if you feel the joy of being cherished as though it were present now, then you have assumed the wish fulfilled. From that state, life reshapes itself to echo your inner act. The power of assumption is not in repetition alone, but in the feeling. It is not enough to say, I am loved, while inwardly clinging to doubt. You must feel the thrill of love already yours. You must walk the streets with the secret delight of one whose desire has already been accomplished. This is not pretense, it is creation. The outer world is only the shadow cast by the light of your inner state, and if you persist in the state of fulfillment, the shadow must rearrange itself accordingly. Consider the playwright who imagines the final act before the play begins. He does not wonder how the characters will move or what words they will speak to arrive there. He holds the end with certainty, and the beginning and middle take care of themselves. So it is with your life. When you assume the end, the path unfolds of its own accord. The confession, the meeting, the words, the circumstances, all these are arranged by powers beyond your conscious planning. Your only task is to dwell in the state of the wish, fulfilled, and refuse to leave it. I recall a time when I desired a change in my own world. Outwardly, the evidence mocked me. Nothing seemed to support the possibility of fulfillment. Yet inwardly, I chose to assume the end. I lived in imagination as though the outcome had already occurred. I felt the relief, the joy, the peace of it being done. I held that feeling, even when outer facts denied it. And in time, the outer facts dissolved, replaced by the very condition I had assumed. It was not coincidence, it was law. What is assumed within must, by the nature of creation, express itself without. When it comes to love, this law is no less true. To assume the wish fulfilled is to live as though the confession has already been made, as though the bond is already sealed, as though you are already the beloved. You do not need to chase or force. You do not need to beg or wonder. You simply assume it done, and in that state of fulfillment, you carry yourself differently. You speak with confidence, you radiate warmth, and the one you desire is drawn irresistibly to play the part that you have written in the silence of your mind. The world calls this imagination fantasy, pretense, but the wise know it as the only true cause. Everything you now experience was once assumed, whether consciously or unconsciously. You have already proven this law by the life you live today, for every joy and every sorrow began first as an inner state. The invitation now is to take hold of the power deliberately, to stop letting chance dictate your world, and to boldly assume the end you desire. Let me remind you, the assumption is not merely an idea, it is a dwelling place. You do not assume for a moment and then return to doubt. You remain there. You return to it again and again until it becomes your natural state. When doubts arise, you set them aside, for you know that they are but shadows of the old state. You refuse to entertain them, and instead you turn again to the end, feeling it real, walking in it, resting in it, until the outer world must yield. What joy it is to live this way, free from the tyranny of appearances. For appearances change, but the law of assumption remains firm. If you assume lack, you will live lack. If you assume fulfillment, you will live fulfillment. To assume the wish fulfilled is the key that unlocks every door, the secret that transforms longing into possession, waiting into having, silence into confession, and desire into reality. The secret is not in words nor in effort, nor even in the endless repetition of phrases. The secret lies in feeling. It is feeling that impresses the subconscious, and it is the subconscious that molds the world you live in. Thought alone may pass through the mind like clouds across the sky, but feeling anchors thought, roots it deep, and compels it to take form. When you feel a thing to be true, even if your senses deny it, you have planted the seed that will bear fruit in due season. Consider love, for love is the highest school of this truth. To long for love with words, to declare again and again, I want someone, to confess their affection. But to feel within loneliness and doubt is to contradict yourself. The subconscious does not hear the words, it feels the vibration. If you speak of love but feel abandoned, the state of abandonment is what is impressed, and the world will mirror that. But if you dare to feel the warmth of love, the thrill of being chosen, the joy of hearing those words spoken to you, then you impress love itself upon your inner self, and life cannot resist giving it expression. Feeling is the bridge between the seen and the unseen. You may construct the scene in imagination. Picture the face of the one you desire, hear their voice, see the surroundings. But it is only when you charge that scene with genuine emotion that it becomes alive. Without feeling, it is a lifeless picture. With feeling, it becomes a living reality. You must feel the embrace, feel the laughter, feel the peace of fulfillment, until it seems more natural than the absence of it. When that happens, you have entered the state that will call forth its likeness in the world around you. There was a moment in my own life when I longed for a certain confession, a word of affection withheld. At first, I tried merely to imagine it. I could see the lips moving, I could hear the sound in my mind, but it felt flat, unreal. Nothing changed. Then I discovered the power of feeling. I closed my eyes, and instead of merely watching the scene, I entered it. I felt the warmth of the words as though they touched my heart directly. I felt the quickening of joy in my chest, the softness of relief, the gratitude that it was so. I let that feeling saturate me until I could no longer deny its reality. Days later, the words I had once only imagined were spoken aloud in the outer world. The picture alone had not moved the world, but the feeling had. This is why it is said that feeling is the secret. The world is not moved by what you think you want. It is moved by what you feel to be true. You may declare, I will be loved, but if you feel forgotten, the feeling prevails. You may say, I am successful, but if you feel small, failure will persist. You may whisper affirmations endlessly, but until they are felt as real, they are like seeds cast upon stone. When, however, you feel the truth of your desire so deeply that it becomes natural to you, the seed falls into fertile ground, and the harvest is inevitable. The senses may argue, the facts may deny, but feeling does not concern itself with appearances. Feeling lives beyond time and space. It accepts what reason rejects. It embraces the unseen as reality now. And when you live in that state, reason itself will bow, and circumstances will bend to reflect what has been felt. The confession you seek from another does not come because you plead for it, but because you have already felt its reality within. The one who speaks those words does so, because you have already heard them in the inner world of feeling. Ask yourself this: how would it feel if what you desired were already accomplished? How would it feel if the person you long for had already declared their love? Do not answer with words, but with sensation. Feel it. Feel the warmth in your body, the calm in your mind, the joy in your heart. Rest in that state as often as you can, and soon it will become your dwelling place. From that dwelling place, the outer world has no choice but to echo what you have accepted within. Remember, too, that feeling is not forced. You cannot strain to feel. You gently surrender to it like slipping into a dream. You let the scene unfold, and you yield yourself to the sensation of its reality. It is effortless when you allow it. The more natural it feels, the more certain the result. You are not convincing the world, you are convincing yourself. And once you have convinced yourself through feeling, the world is compelled to agree. So when you seek love, do not chase it outwardly. Do not measure days by who has spoken or who has remained silent. Instead, close your eyes and step inward. Feel the confession already given. Feel the companionship already secured. Feel the certainty of being chosen. Let that feeling dominate, and soon the silence will break, the words will come, and love will stand before you made flesh. Feeling is the secret because it is the language of creation. Thought is the seed, imagination is the form, but feeling is the life that animates them both. Without it, nothing takes root. With it, everything is possible. To prepare for love, to manifest the confession, to live the life of fulfillment, you must feel it as real now, within yourself. The world is nothing more than the mirror of the feeling you carry. Dare, then, to feel only what you wish to see, and you will see only what you have dared to feel. When love is about to break into the open, the world begins to whisper its secrets long before the confession reaches your ears. Life, in its subtlety, gives you signals that something long imagined is drawing near. These are not accidents, nor coincidences, nor tricks of chance. They are the natural signs that your inner assumption is pressing upon reality, causing it to crystallize in time and space. The signs may be small, but they are sure, and to the one who understands the law, they are the heralds of fulfillment. The first sign is an inner stirring, a quiet sense of certainty that arises within you without effort. It is not born of logic, nor is it the result of outward proof. It is simply a knowing that what you have imagined is inevitable. You may wake one morning and feel different, as though a burden has lifted. You may find yourself smiling without reason, carrying a secret joy no one else can explain. That inner shift is not empty, it is the beginning of manifestation. When love is about to be confessed, you often feel the confession inwardly before it arrives outwardly. Then life begins to arrange outer echoes. The person you long for may suddenly appear in your path more frequently. You may cross them in unexpected places, or hear their name spoken by others when you least anticipate it. Circumstances that once seemed separate begin to converge, as though unseen hands are weaving the threads of destiny. This is not accident, it is the movement of the unseen into the seen. When you have assumed love within, the world begins to move the pieces to reveal it without. Sometimes the signs are more subtle. You may notice your dreams becoming vivid, carrying symbols of union, closeness, or confessions. You may feel an increased awareness of the one you desire, as though your thoughts naturally drift to them with ease. These are not idle fantasies. They are indicators that your subconscious is aligning with the state of fulfillment, and soon the outer confession will reflect the inner one. Another sign is a change in your own behavior. Without forcing it, you find yourself more confident, more at peace, more radiant. You no longer look outward in desperation, but carry the dignity of one already loved. This shift in energy is magnetic. Others notice it, though they may not understand it, and the very one you seek is drawn to the fragrance of your new state. When someone is about to confess love, you often feel no need to chase or question, because you already walk in the fulfillment of it. That inner calm becomes the very magnet that pulls the confession to you. Pay attention also to small synchronicities. You may overhear conversations about love or about relationships in ways that seem uncanny. Songs, books, or films may suddenly reflect your desire back to you. Friends may bring up topics that mirror your inner state. These are not random. They are signs that the outer world is responding to the vibration you have already established within. Each small sign is the shadow of the larger reality about to unfold. There was a time in my own life when I had assumed a confession of love, and before it occurred, the signs began to appear everywhere. I would hear the person's name in unexpected places. I would dream of conversations that felt more real than waking life. I would feel a quiet joy when I thought of them, a joy not rooted in longing but in certainty. Soon enough, the words I had felt within were spoken without. Looking back, the signs had been leading me gently toward the moment all along. Yet it is important to remember that signs themselves are not the cause. They are the effects. They are the early blossoms on the tree that reveal the fruit is near. To focus too much on signs is to forget the source. The true source is always your inner assumption, your inner state. When you assume the wish fulfilled and feel it as real, signs appear naturally, and the confession follows inevitably. Do not chase the signs, but recognize them when they come as confirmations of what you already know within. There is also the danger of misinterpreting signs through the lens of doubt. A small coincidence may occur, and the doubting mind says, perhaps it means nothing. But to the one who has assumed fulfillment, every echo is a reminder that the unseen is becoming seen. Train yourself to look upon life as a mirror of your state. When you have felt the love as real within, all signs point to its unfolding, and nothing can dissuade you from the certainty of its arrival. The greatest sign of all is peace. When you have truly assumed the confession, when you have felt the love as already yours, you no longer grasp or cling. You rest. You walk as one who knows the outcome, and in that rest, life accelerates its movement. Love confessions do not come to those who wait in desperation. They come to those who already live in the vibration of being loved. And when you carry that peace, the words you long to hear will find their way to you, spoken with a naturalness that makes you realize they were always destined to be said. So when you sense that love is near, when signs begin to appear, rejoice in them. See them as gentle whispers from the universe that your inner work is complete and the outer expression is close at hand. The confession you desire is not a future possibility. It is already a present reality in the unseen. The signs are merely the bridge, and soon, the invisible word you have heard within will be spoken aloud by the lips of another. To live from the end is to dwell in the reality of your desire, as though it were already accomplished. It is not to look forward in hope, nor backward in regret, but to stand firmly in the present, as if the end you long for has already unfolded. When you live from the end, you bypass the uncertainty of if and when, for you have already accepted now. You have entered the state of fulfillment, and in that state, the world must mirror your assumption. Most people live toward the end. They stretch their minds into the future, imagining what it would be like if one day the desire is granted. But to live toward the end is to confess its absence today. To live from the end is entirely different. It is to clothe yourself in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and to let that feeling dominate your being, until life bends itself to reflect it. Living toward is waiting. Living from is possessing, and possession within always precedes possession without. Think of love, for it is the most vivid example. If you desire a confession of love, you must not live as one who waits for it. Waiting only affirms that it has not come. You must live as one who has already received it. Walk with the quiet confidence of being adored. Speak with the joy of one already chosen. Rest in the peace of knowing the words you long for have already been spoken in the unseen. When you do this, you are no longer hoping for a confession. You are living from the reality where it already exists. Living from the end requires imagination, but more than imagination, it requires faith, for the senses will scream otherwise. They will show you silence where you wish to hear words, absence where you long for presence, doubt where you seek certainty. If you surrender to the senses, you live only in delay. But if you trust the inner reality, if you hold to the end regardless of appearances, then appearances must shift to agree with the state you occupy. I recall a time when I desired something that seemed beyond my reach. Outwardly, there was no sign, no possibility, no evidence. But inwardly, I dared to live from the end. I saw myself already in possession of it. I felt the satisfaction as though it were mine. I walked each day with the unshakable sense that it was done. Those around me could not understand my serenity, for they saw nothing change. Yet within I lived from the end, and in due time the outer world reshaped itself to match the inner conviction. What once seemed impossible appeared effortlessly, as though it had always belonged to me. This is the great key. You must occupy the state of fulfillment so completely that you cannot be persuaded otherwise. To live from the end is to deny the evidence of the senses when they contradict the unseen truth. It is to say, though the outer world is silent, I already hear the words within. Though the world shows me absence, I already feel the presence. Though no one has confessed love, I already live as though the confession has been spoken. When you live in that state, time itself rearranges to deliver your assumption. Imagine an actor on stage. He does not wonder if the final act will occur. He does not pause to question whether the curtain will fall where the script demands. He enters the role with conviction, playing as though the end is certain. In the same way, when you live from the end, you assume the role of the one who has already received. You no longer worry about the steps. You simply remain in the role until the stage of life aligns with the script of your assumption. To live from the end is also to release strain. There is no struggle in fulfillment. If you were already loved, would you worry? If the confession had already been made, would you beg? If the bond were already secure, would you doubt? Of course not. You would rest. You would rejoice. You would move about your days in the ease of certainty. That ease is the very essence of living from the end. When you embody it, you declare to the unseen that you have accepted the gift, and the unseen delivers what you have already claimed. Many stumble because they believe they must figure out how the desire will come to pass. They say, but how can it happen? How can love arrive when there is no sign? But the how is not your concern. The end contains the how. When you assume the end, the path is drawn for you. Circumstances, meetings, conversations, confessions, all these flow naturally from the state of fulfillment. Your task is not to manage the process, but to live as if the result is already secured. There is a freedom that comes when you dare to live this way. You no longer chase after evidence, nor do you tremble in doubt. You walk in certainty, and certainty carries a fragrance that cannot be hidden. Others sense it, even if they cannot name it. And the one you desire to hear from is moved by that unseen certainty, compelled to play the part you have already assigned them in the secret of your heart. So to live from the end is to live as though the prayer is answered, the desire fulfilled, the love confessed. You no longer wait, you no longer beg, you no longer wonder. You live as though it is already so, and in living from it, you call it into being. The world is nothing but the mirror of your state, and when you dwell in the state of the end, The end cannot be withheld. Love is not something you must run after, chase, or beg for. Love is the mirror held up to the state you occupy within yourself. The affection you receive, the words spoken to you, the confessions of love you long to hear. These are not independent events. They are reflections of what you have already accepted and assumed in your own consciousness. To know this is to hold the key to all relationships, for you will understand that no one outside of you can give you what you have not first granted to yourself. When you feel unloved, it is not because the world has abandoned you. It is because you have assumed the state of being without love, and the world mirrors that assumption. When you feel adored, it is not because another has suddenly discovered your worth. It is because you have already discovered it within, and the world reflects the revelation. Love is never foreign, never distant, never denied. It is always your own inner conception, played back to you by the stage of life. Imagine standing before a mirror. The reflection cannot smile until you smile first. It cannot frown unless you frown. It cannot move independently, for it is bound to your own movement. So it is with love. The one you long to hear confess their heart is only the reflection of the state you carry. If within you hear silence, the reflection will remain silent. But if within you dare to hear the words already spoken, to feel the embrace already given, to assume the joy of being chosen, then the reflection must echo that truth in time. There was a time when I desired love from another, and I believed the key was to win them over, to act, to speak, to perform. Yet the more I tried, the further they seemed to drift. I did not know then that the world was only reflecting my own inner state of lack. I was confessing silently that I was unloved, and so they responded accordingly. When at last I turned inward and began to feel love as already mine, when I let myself rest in the certainty that I was cherished without question, the outer world began to shift. The same person who once seemed distant began to draw near. The confession I had hungered for was spoken, not because I persuaded them, but because I had already persuaded myself. This is the mystery of love's reflection. You cannot experience from another what you have not already assumed for yourself. If you carry doubt, jealousy, or insecurity, life will echo it back. If you carry peace, joy, and fulfillment, life will mirror that instead. It is not the words of others that matter most, but the words you silently speak to yourself. Those silent words shape your state, and your state shapes the reflection you meet in others. To prepare for a confession of love, therefore, you must first become the beloved in your own heart. Do not wait for someone else to say you are chosen. Assume it now. Do not hope for someone else to tell you that you are worthy. Feel it now. Walk as though the declaration has already been made, and the reflection will align with your step. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is living from the truth that love is not something to be earned, but something to be assumed. Think of a lamp shining in the darkness. It does not beg the shadows to retreat. It simply shines, and the shadows disappear. In the same way, when you shine the light of love within yourself, the world cannot help but reflect it. People will sense it in your presence, in your words, in your quiet confidence. The one you desire to hear from will be drawn irresistibly, not because you demanded it, but because you reflected it. The confession is already contained in your own assumption. The other merely delivers what you have already accepted. This is why persistence in love is not chasing after another, but holding firm to the inner state. If you persist in feeling unwanted, you will see it reflected again and again. But if you persist in feeling cherished, even when the outer world is silent, the silence must eventually break into speech. The reflection cannot resist the image it is given. It has no power of its own. So when you look for signs of love, do not look outward first. Look within. Ask yourself, what am I assuming about myself? Do I see myself as loved, as worthy, as chosen? Or do I secretly believe I am forgotten, overlooked, unworthy? Whatever the answer, the world will reflect it. Change the inner assumption, and the outer reflection must change. This is not theory, it is law. You may be tempted to argue that others have wills of their own, that they may choose otherwise. Yet even their choices, as far as you are concerned, must reflect the state you carry. You are not manipulating another, you are shaping the only thing you can ever shape, yourself. And when you change yourself, when you change the inner state, the world responds. The confession you long to hear is not wrested from another's lips. It is drawn forth naturally as the mirror reflects your own posture back to you. Love, then, is the great mirror of life. To desire it is to confess its absence. To assume it is to command its reflection. And when you live in the certainty of being loved, when you walk in the state of fulfillment, when you see yourself already embraced and already chosen, then life has no choice but to return that vision to you. The one you love becomes the reflection of the love you have already dared to assume. And so we come to the end, though in truth there is no end, only the unveiling of what has always been within. You have heard that imagination creates reality, that the secret is not in waiting but in assuming. You have learned that to prepare for love is not to plead for it, but to live as though it is already yours. You now see that the wish fulfilled is not a distant possibility, but a present certainty when you dare to occupy its state. You have discovered that feeling is the lifeblood of creation, the power that gives form to thought and breathes life into imagination. You know that signs are but the gentle whispers of fulfillment drawing near, and that the only way to bring them forth is to remain faithful to the unseen. You understand now that to live from the end is to walk in possession of your desire, with peace, with joy, with quiet assurance, until the outer world bows to the inner truth. You have seen that persistence is the key to fulfillment, for every wavering thought, every return to doubt, only delays the harvest. And above all, you have grasped the great mystery, that love is not something to be earned or chased, but the reflection of what you already believe yourself to be. If you would have love, assume it. If you would hear the confession, hear it first within. If you would live cherished, feel cherished now. The law knows no denial, it only mirrors your state. Dare then to believe the unseen above the seen, to trust the inner word above the outer silence, and soon the silence will break into speech, and the unseen will become visible before your very eyes. Go, therefore, not as one who waits, but as one who has already received. Carry yourself in the certainty of fulfillment, and watch as life reveals in detail what you have already accepted in spirit. The confession is not far, it is already here. And the love you prepare for is none other than the love you have dared to assume.